Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon if you are on my time zone, and welcome to Tattoos and Bodily Autonomy. If you're new to this space, or if you've joined Reproaction's Act and Learn webinars before, we are here in the month of July. So happy to have you here to discuss a topic that doesn't always come up first when you think about reproductive justice, but I think by the time we're done with you, you'll see that tattooing and body modification are a big part of bodily autonomy and thus part of the reproductive justice future that we all seek. So let's get into it. So if you missed us last month, the first voice you're hearing is Shireen Shkori. That's me. I am Deputy Director of Reproaction. Usually our Executive Director, Erin Matson, holds this seat, but she's on sabbatical for the summer. So the previous month and the next two webinars for us will be led by me and a couple of my fabulous colleagues here at Reproaction. So a bit more about me for now. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. You can find me still somewhat often, probably too often, at Sheermean on Twitter. And I will kick it over to Nagar to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, thanks for Shireen for that intro. I'm Negar. I use she or they pronouns. I also go by Negi sometimes. And I am the senior research analyst here at Reproaction, relatively new, started here in March and already having a really great experience with everybody on the team, and I'm super excited to chat with all of the panelists today and talk about all of the healing and all of the art, and definitely as somebody who has tattoos and loves them very much. So I'll kick it back to you, Shireen, for the agreements.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. And we are happy to have you and very grateful that you helped co-present with me today. So first, as far as our agenda goes, you are in the midst of our intro that is happening right now. Next, I'll send it back to Negi to share a background and some of the complexities of tattooing historically and in modernity. And then we'll move into just an amazing discussion with our speakers and provide kind of a tease of next month's webinar before our open Q&A. So if you are listening and you want to ask questions at the end, throw them in the Q&A box on the GoToMeeting platform and we'll make sure we get to you. And if you are extending the conversation with us on Twitter, please keep the discussion. Oh, this is so strange. People are saying that the screen is not visible. I am sorry. Here's the agenda. Hopefully that is visible now. Okay. Technical difficulties abound. But yeah, so if you want to continue the conversation with us, including letting me know that the screen is not visible, you can let us know on the hashtag Reproaction. We keep that consistent for our webinars just so people can reference them back and find all this awesome information. Okay, let's make sure the slides can still be visible when I change them now. Okay. Yeah, folks, chime into the Q&A or the chat if you cannot see me, or not me, the slides. Anyway, Reproaction is a direct action organization that leads bold action to increase access to abortion and advance reproductive justice. We are proud to be members of this space, providing a bold left flank analysis and a strong desire to hold folks on all sides accountable, whether they are traditionally considered allies or opposition. And we do this work with a commitment to the principles of nonviolent direct action and believing that our tools and strength make our allies stronger and our opposition diminishes. So we're making a more favorable climate for reproductive justice, and art is a part of reproductive justice. So with that, I'll kick back to Negi to set us up on today's topic.
Awesome. So I just have a little bit of a brief history of tattoos and kind of their origins. I think many of us know that the practice of tattooing has been a sacred part of many cultural traditions for centuries across lots of different communities, especially in indigenous cultures. They can hold a wide variety of meanings. They can signify ancestry, ceremonial rank. They can show a certain skill set, and many other aspects of life and society. And in earlier, before the modern tattoo machine was developed, materials historically used included like soot, charcoal, plants, and oils to create ink. And then the tools or implements used for tattooing included animal teeth, anywhere from flower thorns, rose thorns, seashells, conch shells. I've seen also some snail shells mentioned in some of these histories. So lots of natural resources. And then of course what we know as or associate most with modern tattooing is the machine, although many artists also still use the stick and poke method. And then I just have some photos next to the slide right here that shows a Samoan traditional tattoo. And what's interesting about this is that the word in Samoan tatau is actually the etymological root of our word for tattoo. And as you can see, the intricacy of the design has lots of different twists, turns, images, and each line and each segment has a different meaning. Also, yes, this is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And then on the bottom of the screen, we have Inuit traditional tattoos, and these also can signify family history, lots of different meanings and ancestral ties. So with that, we can go to the next slide to talk about some of the attitudes and stigmas around the practice of tattooing. Many indigenous cultures have been scrutinized, or their practices have been banned as a result of colonialism. Colonizers, specifically European colonizers, coming in and demonizing tattooing as a practice, kind of using that as an excuse to call indigenous populations uncivilized or barbaric. I have some examples of some of those indigenous peoples in the bullet points. So again, the Inuit, we have Ryukyu and Ainu people of Japan. We have some Amazigh and Bedouin people of Southwest Asia. Those are all great examples of communities to look into if you want to learn more about the scrutinization that they faced historically. And some of these generalizations also persist still today, especially with controversial allegiances, so gangs, and ways that visually will make you stick out in society. And tattoos have also been used to forcibly mark and oppress people, most commonly in the Holocaust. So this is a complicated history because some of these examples are specifically about ancestry and preserving cultural tradition, but it's very important that the choice is evident and explicit in making any type of body modification. So we can go to the next slide. So more modern tattooing practices, obviously I think many of us know, they've become much more commonplace recreationally, and they can commemorate anything ranging from family history to personal accomplishments, or you might just like the style and the aesthetic of the artist, or you might just like the photo. Doesn't always have to mean something significant, it can just be something you like. And cover-ups also have become more prominent in recent years for injuries, scars, surgeries that someone has gone through, and self-harm especially. So creating kind of an art piece and positive mindset and aesthetic with something that might be a painful memory or something you want to associate with strength and resiliency. Likewise, there are many survivors of abuse and other traumas that consider tattoos a way to reclaim bodily autonomy. So, for example, we have the Medusa tattoo on the slide, and I have the artist's handle underneath as well if you want to check out their work. And a lot of survivors of sexual violence have this different kind of styles of this tattoo, but the motif is basically signifying survival and strength and resiliency in the face of hardship and exploitation. There can also be lots of gender affirming aspects of tattooing, whether that's something that you identify with on a spectrum of queerness or gender, and as well as the implications with recovery of something like an eating disorder, and that might be a healing way for you to remember something that is difficult, or create lemonade out of lemons, basically. So we can go to the next slide. And something that I think is new to many of us is looking at tattoos through a disability justice lens. So just briefly defining disability justice, creating and maintaining autonomy and access to all aspects of society for disabled folks who are disadvantaged by the way that society operates now, which is very ableist, meaning that it discriminates against people who are disabled. And obviously these body modifications have different risks for different people, whether you have a disability or not. But there are a lot of extra considerations that many disabled have to take into account, like the accessibility of tattooing spaces can vary a lot, whether you use a mobility device or you need an interpreter or something else that would make the experience more accessible. And then also physical disabilities that might pose a more dangerous risk for tattooing, such as lymphedema, which we'll talk about with one of our panelists, some blood-related disorders or skin conditions that can make it really difficult to decide or ultimately even get a tattoo that is meaningful to you, but that might have really dangerous implications. So when we're thinking about bodily autonomy, we consider very normative or able bodies. And what I mean by that is traditional beauty standards, whether that is white, heterosexual, skinny, lots of different ways that we view bodies in the media that are projected as what is right. And so our considerations and general assumptions about what we can do to our bodies sometimes doesn't include lots of populations that have different experiences than us. So really want to make sure that we use this conversation as a way to talk about tattoos as healing and choosing, doing something that makes you happy, but also consider how different people reclaim bodily autonomy in other ways, and how relationships to our bodies themselves can be healing as well. So I'll kick it back to you, Shireen, for the Q&A, or the panelist discussion.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. Really grounding intro, and I'm super excited to get into our panelist discussion. So first we have Vanessa Ju, who uses they and them pronouns. Vanessa is a healing creative located in Brooklyn, New York, specializing in a multitude of artistic modalities such as tattooing, illustration, and writing. Through the intersection of their art and spirituality, Vanessa empowers clients through play, color, and nostalgia. When they aren't doodling or daydreaming away, Vanessa spends time in nature or fussing around with her two cats, Sugar and Cher, which are cat names that I adore. So I really appreciate that just at the outset. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here and to learn from everyone, talk a little bit about what I do. It's really a joy. So thank you so much.
Beautiful. Well, I'll just get started. How did your journey with tattooing begin, and what parts of it did you find most empowering when you started?
So my journey with tattooing kind of is a bit different than most people, I think. I actually started from a different semi-permanent tattooing medium, which is henna, or it's also known as mehndi in some cultures. And I used to work as a henna freelancer for several years before I actually ended up moving into the permanent tattooing space. So I used to work festivals and weddings and go to events. And at some point, I was talking to people and they were like, you know what, actually, I really love this. I love what you do, and I would get it for real. And I thought to myself, well, okay, like for real. And I also wanted to expand more on just my own personal illustrative style that was outside of what is usually dictated culturally for henna and mehndi. And so over time, I started to study more, reached out to other artists, did apprenticeships, worked with other people, did a lot of my own self-teaching. But through it all, to reach the pinnacle of from then until now, I feel what is most empowering is just being able to connect with so many different types of people. And that truly is such a beautiful and sacred thing. I feel we spend a lot of time in our own communities, whether that is our own minority communities or queer spaces, and tattooing is really special because there is one singular foundational ground, which is art and illustration, and of course bodily autonomy that connects all of us. And so being able to meet all different types of people in all shapes, sizes, different backstories and ethnicities and identities, I think is something that is really empowering and really amazing.
That is so awesome to hear. And just to share with you, my first tattoo was originally a henna design that I had made and decided I want this permanently. So I love hearing that that is how you got into the art yourself. So next question, what led you to start your own studio, and what was your vision for how the studio serves as a multifunctional kind of space for healing?
My goodness, I think if you asked me at the beginning of this year, like, is starting your own studio on your bucket list, on the checklist for this year, it would be absolutely no. It really hit me out of left field as I was making more personal shifts in my own life. And I started to really reflect on what exactly tattooing means to me and how I want to use it as an extension of my mission and what I'm here to do and live and breathe on this planet. Opening my own studio just ended up being the natural transition and the natural segue, just because in my vision and in my heart, I really wanted to create a space that was extremely intimate and extremely healing. And while it is really nice to be in a shop and to have community and friends all around, for some people, when we are discussing, you know, our body and the autonomy that comes together with those things, it's very overstimulating. Sometimes it can be too much to be in a space that is ultimately overwhelming. And I wanted Meadow Sky to be a place that can really explore all the different intersectionalities of spirituality and body modification together. I do really feel that body modification is such a sacred practice. We can see that a lot with our lineage and ancestry of Indigenous, Aboriginal cultures who have known from the beginning that changing your outside body and being able to control that is just an internal reflection of our own spirit and soul. And so I love having Meadow Sky as a space to use energy healing like Reiki or mysticism like tarot. And my personal spiritual foundation is Buddhism. And so that is what I grew up with, and that is what pushes me and propels me forward. And being able to intertwine all of those things together is what really makes Meadow Sky and having my own space really special.
That is so, so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And last question for this portion for you, what would you say you specialize in as your design style, and what about it draws your clients to your work?
Yeah, so my design style varies quite a lot, I feel like. I do a lot of pieces that incorporate color and incorporate fun and whimsy. I love also playing around with texture, whether that is just something oil pastel-esque, but also drawing inspiration and reimagining works of art in media like anime or Ghibli movies. But the overall undertone, I think, of what really draws clients to my work are feelings of magic and comfort and nostalgia. And I absolutely love that, because I think over time, as I have grown closer to my identity with tattooing, I have really stressed the idea of just a simple happiness of, yeah, I like this. Oh, this brings me joy. This imagery makes my soul feel happy. And there doesn't need to be any more rhyme or reason than that to put it on my body. And so I feel that clients are able to kind of see that and feel that energy and naturally are attracted to it. Ultimately, though, it's really amazing for me to create work and for people to find their own identity within that, being drawn to it. And I'll ask clients all the time, you know, why did you want to get this flash piece, or why did you want to come to me? And a lot of the answers always are very similar, in the sense that they just feel naturally drawn to it because it just feels like, oh, that's supposed to be on my body. That was like always supposed to be there. And hearing client stories of how they have their own interpretation of my work, what that means to them, that intersectionality of me to them to art, and ultimately rippling out to all different types of communities and people, is really something that is truly so sacred and so, so beautiful.
I am going to sit with the concept of simple happiness for a long time, and I really appreciate you bringing that into our space. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you have questions for Vanessa at the end, drop them in our Q&A box. But for now, I will kick it over to Nikki, who will talk to Olivia.
Oh,
we got
sorry,
you?
can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, so introducing our next panelist. So Olivia Eggers, who uses she and they pronouns, is a coordinator for development, information, and strategy at the Environmental Defense Fund based out of Washington, D.C. Olivia was born with a rare disease, primary lymphedema, which affects her appearance, mobility, and causes chronic pain. After taking a number of disability classes at their alma mater, GWU, they discovered their true passion in working towards disability justice. Over the past few years, Olivia spurred into activism in the lymphedema community and has appeared on a number of podcasts, including the Lymphedema podcast and Normal Adjustments podcast. We'll drop the links for those in the chat to discuss disability, accessibility, and inclusion. She is very excited to be part of this panel and looks forward to sharing her authentic experiences with tattoos as a disabled person. So Olivia, thank you so much for joining us. And my first question for you is, what has been your relationship with tattoos and body modifications in general? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about how your disability affects these decisions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Nikki, and thank you for asking me to be a part of this. I'm really excited to be here and to get to input this disability perspective on it. So my relationship with tattoos and body modifications has been a bit of an unrequited love story, I would say. I've been very, very interested in getting tattoos for most of my teenage and adult life, but because of my lymphedema, I am unable to get those tattoos. So I know not everyone knows what lymphedema is, so I'll just give a bit of brief context to it. Lymph means fluid and edema means swelling. So basically, lymphedema is swelling that is caused by an excess of fluid in your body. The lymphatic system acts as a means to transport said fluid and dispose of it. However, when I was in utero, my lymphatic system did not form properly, and so therefore I have swelling across my entire body. My case of lymphedema is 1 in a million in that it is global rather than just in one limb, things like that. So with that context, with lymphedema, I have to be very, very careful of getting any cuts, any wounds, having any needles go into my body in any way, because it can aggravate the swelling, and I'm very disposed to having bacterial infections. And so while I have wanted to have tattoos to express myself for, since I was probably 15, 16, I have always been told that I cannot do that because at the, minimum consequence of it would be my swelling could become exacerbated. Maximum consequence of it could be I get a really serious bacterial infection that could prove fatal. So that is something that I've had to take into account when looking into tattoos and whether or not I would pursue those. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And curious, what kind of tattoos have you considered, and what feels most important to represent about yourself and for yourself?
Yeah, no, great questions. So I've considered a number of tattoos. They do have a few that are like temporary, but basically permanent for a month that you can order. And actually something that my best friend had done for one of my birthdays was she ordered me a set of tattoos from Inkbox, which is one of those like temporary tattoo type places. And it came with like 15 different tattoo options that you could personalize and customize. So she had gone ahead and gotten me some ones like, I really love bumblebees, so there was one for bumblebees. I'm really into bunnies because bunnies remind me of my grandmother who passed away when I was a child. So it's different things like that where I'd want tattoos that have meaning to me, kind of based in nostalgia in a lot of way. I've always said that I'd want to have like a little bunny sitting on a moon fishing into the stars if I could, and there are means to do that in a non-permanent way for me through vendors like Inkbox or Tata Pick or Momentary Ink, I believe it's called. So those options exist, but they would be kind of rooted in this idea of people I've lost, people I have loved, and the memories that they kind of have given to me. So.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really insightful. And I'm glad that there are ways that you can engage in that, even if they are temporary. What do you wish that people knew about your relationship with bodily autonomy in general as a disabled person? So this could be related to tattoos or body modifications, or just in general, and however you want to interpret the question.
Yeah, no, and that's a really, really terrific question, and one that I'm really glad that we're bringing into this space right now. So for me, it's very interesting because I was someone who was born with a disease, which is a chronic disability, and so therefore was a child with a disability. And I would say until recently, I had not reclaimed my own bodily autonomy in any way. As a kid, you know, my parents told me what I needed to do with my body in order to stay healthy and stay safe. And then doctors would also, you know, tell me what I should be doing. But my body to me never really felt like my own. It felt like just an externality of me that other people had control and power over, because there was so much fear over what could happen if I, you know, tripped and fell, or if I, you know, had to get a shot in some way and how it could affect my body. It felt like I couldn't make any of those decisions, and therefore my parents and other adults in my life and the doctors around me were instead of dictating everything that could and should happen to my body. And it's only been in the past few years as I've connected with more people who have lymphedema that I've realized, like, you know, even though doctors and other adults in my life had all of these says in my decisions when I was a child, that's not necessarily the case now when I'm an adult. Like, my body is my body and mine alone. But that was really a process that I had to go through to get to that mindset of reclamation for myself. Because I feel like often for a lot of disabled people, we are seen as kind of outliers in this discussion when it pertains to bodily autonomy, since there are so many medical components to it. And now I'm just like, no, this is me, this is what I'm doing. And on the tattoo front specifically, I had posed a question to my lymphedema community that I have at one point, asking, hey, everyone, like, does anyone out there have tattoos? Because I'm really interested in getting them, but I've been told my entire life by parents and other doctors that it's a terrible idea, I could die, etc. What do you think? And I had a bunch of people come back to me, very surprisingly, those who also have lymphedema. They were like, Olivia, yeah, I was also, you know, kind of fear-mongered in that way of like, you should not do this, it's the worst idea ever, why would you put yourself at risk? But it was something where there was all of this fear around it that wasn't necessarily going to be the reality, because again, lymphedema is not very well researched or explored, so we're still learning so much about it. And they brought up some good points where they were like, you know, doctors also tell us not to eat sodium and to be completely compressed 24 hours a day and to never experience the sun and things like that. And at that point, you don't really have a great quality of life if you're adhering to everything a medical professional has told you. And that is something that I've been having to create a balance of in my own life, where I'm like, sure, I want to be safe, I want to be taking care of my body, I want to make sure that I have a nice trajectory for myself in terms of my own well-being, but at the same time, I don't want to put myself in this bubble. And that's a bubble that I had been put into as a child and was really stuck in up until a few years ago. And now, as I find other adults in the community and hear other people's experiences, I'm realizing that, like, even though society might not necessarily want me to reclaim my own autonomy for myself, it is necessary for me to do it. And I always say that, you know, me saying that my disabled body is my own is my everyday act of resistance against a ableist society that doesn't really see disabled people as people. And so that's something I'm going to keep doing. And, you know, I will say, on to go back to the tattoo front, I did get bit by a dog a few months ago and ended up having to get 7 stitches in one of my affected lymphedema limbs. And that is something too where I'd been told my entire life, don't get bit by a dog, don't let this happen, it'll be the worst thing, like it could ruin your entire body, it'll ruin everything. You can't really control whether or not a dog is going to bite you, but that happened and I did not die. Like there were no severe medical consequences. And I'm like, okay, well, these are things we have to weigh, like the risks as opposed to the benefits. If I could get bit by a dog, which I did not want to happen, and, you know, come out okay, is there a way for me to approach getting tattoos in a way that would not harm my body, but would be something that I would enjoy? And so that's something that I've been thinking about and continuing to explore as I think about my relationship to tattoos. But at this moment, I'm grateful to, you know, temporary tattoo vendors to give me at least some artistic expression while I continue to kind of research this field and see what I can do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. You know, I heard a friend of mine once told me, you know, the only thing we come into this world with is our bodies, and we should be able to choose what we do with them. And I think that really encompasses what you were just sharing. So I'm going to pass it back to Shireen to talk to our last panelist before we go into the Q&A.
Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate just the parallels that you find in conversations around disability justice and, you know, how it all amasses to bodily autonomy, and how these are the exact conversations we have in the sphere of bodily autonomy and abortion access, particularly when we think about later abortion and just people needing to take certain risks with criminalization as well to own control over their own bodies. So parallels abound. I really appreciate your perspectives, Olivia, and I will move to our next speaker, Angela. So Angela has been tattooing for about 3 years and has been at Crybaby Studios in DC for about a year. She focuses mostly on fine line and black and gray, but enjoys doing many different styles of tattoos. She's still exploring and learning about herself as a tattoo artist, and she is here with us today to describe a little bit of that exploration. So hi, thanks for joining us, Angela.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
We are so, so grateful to have you. So to open up, why don't you explain a bit about how your journey with tattooing began and what parts of it were most empowering for you?
Sure. So I have been kind of doing art my whole life, but I got into tattooing kind of late, I would say, compared to most other artists. I didn't get my first tattoo until I was about 25. And after that experience, and I saw that this was, a job where it seemed like it was mostly drawing, and the way getting tattooed made me feel about my own body. I think that's what really attracted me to it. I was, someone who was very self-conscious and always wore long sleeves and didn't really want to show anything. But then getting that tattoo really made me excited to see my arm and want to show it off. And that feeling, it was such a freeing feeling for me. And that's also another thing that when I'm tattooing someone, and especially if I do their first tattoo for them and they kind of have that realization when we're done, I think that's something that I find really empowering about the entire process.
I love that. I also got my first around 24, 25. And something someone had said to me when I was in my decision-making process of doing it was your body is already art. Why not put art on it? And once I had that shift of it's not me adding something to, my body, it is enhancing the existing art of the human form. And yeah, that was really affirming for me. So next question for you. What would you recommend for someone considering a tattoo, whether or not they've had one before, where the subject matter or the symbolism of it is particularly personal or meaningful for them? How should they navigate that?
Yeah, so for things like that, I definitely recommend researching your artist. And that's the great thing about Instagram, is that you can kind of some artists share a lot more about themselves on there, so you can really kind of get a feel and kind of see their vibe and if you would work well with them. Something that I hear a lot of people say is that they've had bad experiences with tattoos, and I think that's just because a lot of people don't necessarily know what to look for when looking for an artist, but definitely starting with finding an artist whose style you like is probably the first step, and then just getting a feel for them and seeing if they would be a good fit for you, because there's tattooing is you're put in a very vulnerable position, and so you want to make sure that you're with someone that prioritizes your comfort and is checking up on you and making sure that you're feeling comfortable during the entire process.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I've heard a lot of different anecdotes of people, taking a design that's either personal to them or just, a really heavy project, and realizing they maybe should have done more research on their artists, either people who don't always work with darker skin tones and not doing a color test, or just the artistic style doesn't clash with what their vision is. Like, there's definitely a fun and beauty of going in and like getting a flash, or having the spur of the moment kind of energy to it. But I think you're exactly on the money. Doing your research about an artist, since art is so subjective, would definitely make a big difference for folks doing more personal pieces. Thanks for that. Last question until we go to the open Q&A. What is your favorite part of the process of working with the client, and what about your design style attracts clients to your work?
So definitely, I would say my favorite part of the entire process is actually tattooing them and like having a conversation with them during the tattoo, getting to know them, and then of course, the the happiness on their face at the end of the tattoo, when they love it. That's definitely my favorite part. But I do a lot of like fine line work, and I definitely think that people are drawn to that because that's kind of the trend that's going on right now. But me personally as an artist, I would like to explore other styles. I feel like because I got into it kind of late, it's taken me a bit longer to really develop like a style that I would say that I specialize in. So yeah, for me, it's more like about the process, and that's probably the part that I enjoy the most.
Awesome. Just as a point of moderator privilege, could you explain a bit of the differences in like fine line work versus other artistic trends, or just artistic styles that people might see when they think of tattoos?
Sure. So also going off on a point that was made earlier, I think it's also important to have like an open mind about the design that you want to get, because if something is too small, it can't be done, or like on certain areas of the body it just wouldn't heal very well. So it's definitely important to have an open mind, especially when it comes to like fine line tattooing, because it's still a fairly new style that a lot of people are really interested to see what it'll look like in like 20 years. But the truth is, there aren't really a lot of fine line artists that have been around that long or have done that. So it's very important to keep an open mind with it. Fine line tattooing is generally a very gentle method of tattooing. So there's a lot of possibility for falling out and like requiring a touch up, and certain things like you do have to keep in mind their skin tone. Sometimes if it's too thin, it won't be visible, so you do have to go a little bit thicker, and yeah, just little things like that. Did I answer the question?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you so much. Yeah, just wanted to open it a little more for folks who might not have as much experience with the artwork itself. But I will just say now that if you haven't dropped a question in for any of our speakers yet, there is still time. Throw it in the Q&A box and we'll try to get to everyone. And after this artful discussion today, you can plug into Reproaction's campaigns. So sign up for our email alerts. That's where you will learn about our next monthly webinar and all of our other programming. We cover all the flavors of reproductive justice, bodily autonomy issues, that encompass the movement that we're so proud to be a part of. So follow us on whatever social media platform you hate the least, and be sure to sign up for our email list as well. I'm also going to plug our speakers today, not on our usual Twitter, which is what we typically do, but on Instagram. You can see our artists at meadowsky.studio for Vanessa, and Angela's art is at NORANSECK, all one word. Then you can also find out Olivia's activism going on at OLIVIANEGGS, Olivia Niggs, and that's all on Instagram. So follow their work. And save the date for next month's webinar as well. We are going back to school. I know it's still summer now, but before you know it, that season will be upon us. So we're talking about age-appropriate but still comprehensive resources for young people to learn about their bodies, about sex, gender, and autonomy. Should be a really awesome discussion, so I hope you can join us then as well. And without further ado, I will go to our Q&A box. Someone made a point about certain religious traditions that prohibit tattoos and kind of the view that your body is not yours. It is God's, and yeah, that's a really important and informative perspective as well. I've known several people who kind of left more restrictive religious traditions or just restrictive like parental or familial situations, and like their first tattoo or even first piercing was a sign of like, my body's mine now, and taking that control is really, really powerful for people. For another Q&A, I'm going to kick it to Olivia first. Do you have, other than the temp tattoos you mentioned, do you have any tips for people looking to experiment with personal expression who may not feel like tattoos are ever right for them?
Sorry, Shireen, you had broken up just at the end there. Could you repeat the end of that question?
Oh yeah, surely. Do you have any tips for people who may be looking to experiment with personal expression, who may not feel like tattoos are ever right for them?
That is a really good question. Yes, I would say I myself started experimenting more with my hair in terms of how I represent myself, given tattoos were not an option. And so what I kind of did was rebranded myself and finally cut my hair the way I wanted to. And now every day when I style it, it takes into account, you know, my own individuality and authenticity. And otherwise, I think even if you're not going for tattoos necessarily or piercings or however they may be, you can really incorporate your own artistic expression into kind of what you wear, how you accessorize. That's something that I try to do. This might be a silly one, but I put a lot of stickers on a lot of things. Even though I can't necessarily sticker myself, I have a lot of stickers and kind of keep them with me on my water bottle or whatever it may be, just so that I have things that are important to me near me, even if they are not necessarily on me.
I hadn't even thought about stickers, but that is so real because I am the biggest sticker girly. They are on every surface that they can acceptably be on, and they bring me so much joy in a similar way to more permanent bodily art. So thank you for that. For the artists, we'll start with Vanessa from the top and then back to Angela. If you're comfortable sharing, what is your favorite tattoo on yourself and why? And if not, you could say your favorite tattoo that you've drawn, or both.
Oh, wow. What a question. I feel like I am posed this question a lot and my answer changes also a lot, but I would say overall, my most favorite tattoo that I have is one of the many favorite tattoos that I have, let's say, is a piece that spans across the back of my, along my shoulder blades. It is done by, her handle on Instagram is Eve Does Tattoos, like EVE Does Tattoos. Cute and simple. And it's basically just two deer with some Art Nouveau type floral embellishment. It's very sweet and really gentle. It reminds me, I love deer and I love the woodlands in general, and I feel that embodying that type of really beautiful, tender softness, reminding myself of that it doesn't have to always be very harsh. It doesn't always have to be like go, go, go 24/7 in this super fast pace and what is the word? Instant gratification of our society now, that things can just be very slow and sweet and gentle.
I love that. Angela.
I'd say my favorite tattoo, it definitely changes. It's probably usually always like the most recent tattoo that I've gotten that is my current favorite. But probably the most, I guess one that made me feel the most different. My coworker Simba did a huge chrysanthemum on my arm, and that's definitely like the biggest tattoo that I have. And I think I still struggle a lot with a lot of like body image issues, and every time I get a new tattoo like that, you know, I'm always excited to show it off. And it just gives me like a new kind of it like resets my confidence a little bit. So I would say probably right now it's that one.
I like the idea of a confidence reset for any kind of bodily modification, because it's so true. You really do see yourself in a different light once you have a new cool thing on you that makes you happy. Next question. So this one's for the artists again. We can start with you this time, Angela. Have you ever had a client request for a design or a location, or anything that you just couldn't do for whatever reason, whether it was the difficulty of it, the pain for them, whatever reason that you had to turn them away or guide them to a different tattoo?
So normally if I say that I don't feel comfortable doing a tattoo, a lot of times it's more of a skill issue for me. Like if they are looking for something very, very geometric or lots of straight lines, but they want it to go on a more difficult part of the body, like somewhere on the torso, or something that has like where the skin is known to be a lot thinner or stretchier. Though that's typically when I say that I can't do something. Something that I do tell my clients is to not share the meaning of their tattoo when they're just like trying to get a quote from me, just because sometimes I'll get a lot of requests for tattoos and there's just stories and stories that people want to share, which I know that they're so special, but it's a lot to take in. So generally I try to tell people to keep their requests to just what their tattoo is going to look like. And I really judged on that. Like, do I think that I would really bring this concept to life? Do I feel confident that I'm the best artist for something like this? Yeah, that's usually about how I go about taking on projects.
That's so real. There is a lot of pressure in holding people's stories and holding the symbolism of their lives and experiences. Vanessa, do you have a response to that anytime you've had to turn someone away?
Yeah, I definitely have had that experience before. Very similar in the sense to what Angela said, that it is important to ask and be like, am I the right person for this? Sometimes people might think that you are. And of course, whether or not I'm able to fulfill that is really, it depends on so many different factors. For me, usually it's either one of two reasons for me to turn away a request. The first being that most likely the style or the idea it simply just doesn't resonate with me and what I create. I would honestly hate to be doing a tattoo and be miserable and I also don't want that experience for my client either, for them to think that they're bringing a really special design and something that's really precious to them, and to have someone who isn't just as excited, if not more, to do that piece. I think that's a really big disservice to the client. And the second point is that it is usually for me an issue of location. There are some places on the body that I do not tattoo anymore, simply because my body can no longer handle it. There are placements like the along the ribs or the back that are very strenuous for my own body, and therefore I have kind of drawn that boundary in terms of not overstraining. I do have carpal tunnel. I do suffer from a lot of chronic back pain as well. So that is, for me, it's usually either or of those two reasons.
That makes so much sense. It's a lot of work, particularly when you are working in such precision. Thank you for sharing that. Next question is for Olivia. So we are in Disability Pride Month, and I hoped you could give a few minutes of a, more enhanced discussion from your Q&As about the intersections of disability and reproductive justice, and the bucket of bodily autonomy as a topic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And happy Disability Pride Month, everyone. It's a very exciting time. So on the intersectionalities of bodily autonomy and disability justice in particular, there are so many things to take into account. And a lot of it is that our society, and particularly the way that we have a lot of our, often our grassroots movements organized, they do not take into account accessibility and ways to ensure that disabled people can always participate in the movements, in the conversations, however it may be. And when it comes to bodily autonomy specifically, we have seen historically, disabled people being forcibly sterilized, put into, oftentimes we experience a lot where disabled people are put into caregiving situations where it is exploitative. They do not have actual say over their body and the things that are happening to them. And I think that's a really important discussion in the reproductive justice space for us to have, because we continue to see whether it is disabled people being sterilized or them just not being given a voice in the movement, or just kind of excluded from all of the conversations that continues to contribute to this overlying problem of us not actually including disabled people in the narrative. And in the United States, disabled people, they make up the largest minority that we have. I believe there are over 50 million disabled people in our country, but they're the most silent majority, often because we are silenced. And that is incredibly apparent when it comes to bodily autonomy and reproductive justice. I myself have had a lot of experiences with doctors where they have dictated what I should do with my body when it comes to reproduction in itself. Like, I've been told don't have kids. I've been told, well, one, because it would be dangerous for me, but two, because they don't want necessarily my lymphedema to go on to another generation. And so these are all part of the conversation. And it also goes into this aspect of eugenics and euthanasia in a way. This idea of like disability is not the correct way to be, it's compulsory able-bodiedness. And we need to move away from that mindset, particularly in the reproductive justice sphere, and seeing that like being able-bodied is not the normative. Like, it should not be what is expected to be typical. And when we are having discussions about reproductive justice, about activism, we need to make sure that we're taking disability and disabled voices into account to continue these conversations, because all of the complexities that may arise, different factors, disabled people are a part of that. And we bring our own unique perspectives to the conversation as well. So it's important not to sidestep those perspectives and to instead include them.
I think that is as beautiful a way to end this webinar as any. Thank you so much, Olivia, Vanessa, Angela, our three speakers today. The plugs that I gave earlier, we will also send out in the follow-up email to those who registered and attended today. Thanks again so much, everyone. This was a really awesome conversation, and we are really thrilled to have you.